Hello, it's BlueOrange22. So, just a quick video this morning. You see the title says, most people are men's rights activists. And you might be thinking, well, obviously that's not true. But here's what I mean by that. I find that when I talk about the men's rights movement, when I have debates about it, what people actually object to is the label. But when I talk about the actual issues, most people seem to agree. And if I tell people that I'm an MRA, I get an immediate negative reaction. Like immediately people dismiss it and say, oh, that's wrong. The men's rights movement is bad because they had that negative perception of what it is. But when I just talk about the issues first, I find that the majority of people agree with the majority of things that MRAs say. So when I talk about things like, oh, I think men should have equal pension ages, or I think male victims of domestic violence deserve to be recognized, or I talk about things like the education gap, and how it's a concern that boys are falling so far behind in the education system. People usually agree, and people usually say, oh yeah, that makes sense. What they object to is the label of the men's rights movement. And what that really means is what they object to is the image and the perception of the men's rights movement. Another thing I find is that a lot of people don't really even know what the issues of men's rights are. And when I start debating people, they have a preconceived idea that, oh, you're probably one of those alt-righters, you think women belong in the kitchen, etc. But when I start telling them about issues like conscription, like the education gap, like male victims of domestic violence, a lot of times I get this reaction. Oh, I never knew that. And when I explain what the issue actually is, or whatever the law is that's discriminatory, people agree. And people will say, I didn't think MRAs talked about things like this. And as a matter of fact, I didn't even know that things like this existed. I often think that the men's rights movement, the biggest problem that we have is with image. And I hate to use the word branding, but that really kind of is the problem. Because it's not the ideas or the beliefs of the men's rights movement that people don't like. Because when I explain the ideas and the beliefs, people tend to agree. Even when I debate feminists and I bring up some of the points that you've seen on this channel before, a lot of feminists say, well, that's actually a good point. I never knew that before. And that's one reason why we need the men's rights movement, is there's really no other movement that talks about all of the issues that we do. And most people, or I should say a lot of people, aren't even aware of all the issues that we talk about. So that's just some morning thoughts.